All right. Today on the podcast, we have Peter Ferrari. You heard a little bit about him in the intro. He's essentially a freelance artist focused on murals based here in Atlanta. He also created the Forward Warrior, a live street art kind of block party, if you will, based here in Cabbagetown, Atlanta. So, Peter, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Really excited to be here.
Yeah. So how I kind of stumbled upon you was we were walking around Cabbagetown and saw a ton of street art, and I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, so much. A little bit about me. I just moved to Atlanta about 6 months ago, so we were exploring around. I'm like, Atlanta has so much creativity and art around the city. It's crazy. But how I found you was my brother actually found you on Instagram. He's like, hey, here's the guy that created this thing. You need to check him out. And I was like, ding, light bulb. I need to have this guy on the podcast. So,
Yeah,
man, welcome. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got started.
sure. So I went to school at Emory. I went for sociology and wound up teaching after college for about 6 years. I got my master's in education and really enjoyed teaching for a while. I was always kind of an artist. I was making art as more of a hobby. And I had a few opportunities come up my last year teaching, and I just kind of made this decision to make the leap and see if I could go a year just as a freelance artist. Being able to commit 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is just very different than trying to do it on weekends and nights, which a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs realize. And yeah, that was 10 years ago now. So I've been a freelance artist. Like you said, I'm mostly known for murals. I do a lot of murals in office spaces and apartment complexes. I do some stuff that's really more just for me that I think people would qualify as street art. And then I've been running this event in Cabbagetown, as you mentioned, for about, we started in Cabbagetown in 2014. So the event itself is about 8 years old, but in Cabbagetown, it's just since 2014. So it was just sort of a perfect opportunity. I was putting on this live painting event already. It was really more just kind of like a party. We had DJs and 12 artists painting on panels just as kind of the entertainment. And then we did that for a couple of years and then got asked to bring it to Castleberry Hill. This is another pretty artistic neighborhood in Atlanta. And so we did several walls in Castleberry Hill in this kind of block party setup, like you mentioned. And then if you're familiar with Cabbagetown, Atlanta, there's a huge wall that basically runs a half mile down a street called Wiley. And at some parts it's maybe 12 feet tall, and other parts it's upwards of 25 feet tall. And it was kind of an eyesore for them. There was a lot of, it would get tagged, and then somebody would paint over it, and then it would get tagged, and it was just kind of a mess. And the neighborhood wanted to address that. And somebody thought of my event essentially at that time and said, hey, why don't you bring, Peter Ferrari and Forward Warrior down here, and we can start painting murals. And so that was 2014, and we've painted murals essentially every year since then. And now we have an unbroken half mile of street art. Usually the event takes place over a weekend. It's in the fall, or we were doing it in the summer, but now we're doing it in the fall because it's too damn hot. And we have upwards of 40 to 50 artists. A lot of times artists will return from previous years to paint over their murals. So there's obviously space starts getting thin after a while, and we have to just kind of start painting over stuff. But it's an amazing event, brings out the community. It creates this kind of Atlanta landmark, which you experienced, and gets people's gears turning, who did this and why did they do it, and how can I get involved? And so it was just an amazing opportunity for me, and I think for that community, and it works really well.
Yeah, man, it's really interesting. Yeah, and I lived in Charlotte that had a little bit of kind of that creative scene, not nearly as much as Atlanta. I've traveled to San Diego, like around kind of the U.S., and it seems like to me, Atlanta is probably one of the one of the most creative, at least from my perspective. Is that, I mean, is that what you're seeing? Have you been here forever?
Not forever, but I moved here. I was actually born here. I moved away when I was about 2 years old, and came back when I was 11 in 1991. So I have been here for 30 plus years. I definitely consider myself born and raised in Atlanta. Obviously, have seen it go through a lot of changes since the 90s and early 2000s. I think Atlanta has pulled a lot of creativity from surrounding areas. I think if you're born in South Carolina or North Carolina or North Florida or Alabama or Mississippi, that it's kind of the big city dream as a creative to come to Atlanta. Especially when you consider the hip hop scene we have here, and just the amount of recording artists and musicians and everything that's sort of blossomed up over the past few years. It's kind of like a bottleneck for a lot of creativity in the South. And folks who maybe don't fit in more conservative places might want to come here because they find it's more inclusive and it's more diverse. So I think Atlanta is just kind of a natural bottleneck for creativity in general, and you can see it. You just see it everywhere. And I think that's why I've stayed here so long, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool, man. And before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of this, where can people go online to find more about you?
Sure. I mean, Google's the easiest way. I have a lot of different articles that have been written about me. I currently don't have a website. I used to have one and just found it to be a lot easier to just maintain my social media. So on Instagram, I'm Fast Red Car. And then you can just Google Peter Ferrari on Facebook. I'm on there as well. And Forward Warrior, there's loads of stuff on Forward Warrior on the internet. If you Google that, there's also a lot of different YouTube videos that people make. That's another part of the event. We try and sort of open it up to collaborations with videographers and photographers, and so there's always loads of content that comes out of the event as well. And yeah, I'm out there. My most up-to-date art is on Instagram. It's just easiest for me that way.
Yeah. Cool. And question for you. So Peter Ferrari, such a badass name. Like, is that your God-given name, or did you change it?
It is my God-given name. Yes.
That is awesome.
My dad's name is Pierre Ferrari, and my dad's actually is an immigrant from Central Africa. He's lived in the Belgian Congo, and so for us, it's he's Italian, Belgian, and Italy. Ferrari is a very common name actually. Ferrous, iron is sort of the term for a blacksmith. So Ferrari is the equivalent of Smith in Italy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But of course, everyone knows it as the car, and I get that all the time. My joke about it is, how big of a tool would I have been to change my name to Peter Ferrari? I mean, Jesus. No, it's my real name, absolutely.
Nice, nice. All right, man. Let's get into the kind of the art. You've been doing it for 10 years, so you're a seasoned person. Like, where did you kind of start, and so you mentioned earlier you had kind of a year allotted from teaching. What was that kind of threshold where it's like, okay, yes, was it a monetary aspect? Was it like, I want to paint 5 pieces of professional content? Like, how did you kind of go through that process where you weren't going to go back to teaching?
Right. Well, I kind of left my previous career at the exact right moment. So if you look at what was going on in Atlanta and the art scene in 2010, which is when I quit my job, there was Living Walls was a big thing at that time. It was a public art event. It still is a public art event, but it was a little bit more of an event rather than a sort of an initiative, which is what it is now. So I was coming up with a lot of different artists who were coming up at the same time, who were painting murals at the same time. So there was sort of this focus on public art and an awareness around public art. People were investing in clothing brands that featured artists who do street art. And so I was kind of able to amplify myself much more easily because of that. I think just generally, once I had sort of made a name for myself, there was a way, there was sort of a phenomenon of people wanting a Peter Ferrari, like that's kind of how it is in art, the name can get you somewhere. And like you said, I have a memorable name, and I think that didn't hurt either. But once I had painted a few murals, the checks are way better for murals than they are for teaching. So I was able to start having, positive cash flow, before that year was up. And sort of reinvesting in myself, reinvesting in different equipment, doing different work that maybe isn't as artistic early on. It's more about technique and execution, sign painting, things like that. So I kind of diversified early on and realized I had a skill set that I could get paid for in sort of a lot of different ways. And then, that just kind of aggregates, you do one corporate mural and another corporation says, oh, that's cool, we could get that guy for our lobby, and you line up 5 or 6 of those in a year and you're good to go. And my clients have kind of only grown. I did a huge wall for Atlanta United last year that was just an amazing experience, about 1,000 square feet, 120 or 106 foot tall wall. It was crazy, the whole thing, but we got it done, and it was an amazing commission. And then working with brands like Red Bull and Microsoft and NCR, and it's kind of like once you get in the right Rolodexes, people don't use Rolodexes anymore, but once you get in the right contact list, that list is pretty short, so things kind of get easier as you go along.
Yeah. Was there a kind of a tipping point where it's like, you start hitting maybe a couple gigs, and then it's like, oh, then the phone starts ringing. Was there a tipping
Yeah.
point in your career that you kind of realized looking back?
Yeah, I think, I'd have to get back if I, look through specifically and see where that was. But absolutely, I think it's more about the anxiety that you feel when you're an entrepreneur.
Right,
how
right.
much is it anxiety and how much is it trust? Because I think early on, it's hard to trust yourself. It's hard to understand that you're selling something that people actually want to buy. And so for me, I had saved money before I quit my job, so I knew that if I was a complete flop, I wasn't going to be, out on the streets or anything like that. But there was definitely a point where I started to realize, okay, I can breathe, I can keep doing what I do, and I feel confident that people are gonna keep supporting me to do it. The thing with being an artist is that you always have to be, you have to kind of keep changing too, though. If you keep doing the same thing, then nobody's interested in that. It's been done. So I think as an artist, you have to stay creative. You have to sort of keep your content interesting, your concepts interesting. You have to respond to what's going on in society, which I think has been a big focus of mine in certain pieces. And yeah, you got to stay relevant. That's really the word. You got to stay relevant. And I've seen a lot of people start out and have a lot of energy early on, and then they just kind of fizzle because it's really a marathon. And it takes some artistic and creative endurance to get there.
Yeah. How do you stay relevant? Like, how does an artist go from, I don't know if it's from style to style, or more like just staying up with the times, like everything that's happened in the world now? Like, how do you stay relevant in your eyes?
Yeah. I think part of it is being proactive in your sort of your artistic pursuits. So you need to be making work. You need to be pushing things. Doesn't mean you have to be sharing it with everybody, but you need to be pushing your concepts on your own in private in your studio. And then I think you need to be reactive as well with responding to what's going on in the world, responding to the a changing art market, a changing maybe age range. I feel like early on in my career, the folks buying my work were in their 20s, and now I'm doing commissions for people in their 50s. And part of that has to do with sort of financial differences and all that, and what my prices have gone up over the years. But I think you have to sort of keep changing and understanding your role within that ecosystem, which is hard. I think it can be very easy to rest on your laurels and kind of just do what you know has been successful, but over time, it's not going to work in a creative discipline.
Yeah. And what's your ideal project? Like, what is one thing you would be like, this is the perfect thing that I want to work on. If I could do this forever, it would be it. Is it murals, or is it, something of a different avenue?
Yeah, I go back and forth. I love painting murals just for the simple impact of it. I love big public murals, but the physical actual act of painting, 800 square foot mural or something is a lot. Especially in the Georgia heat. So if I could just crank out, little paintings in my studio and be rich and famous like that, that might be interesting. um, so I go through phases. I like to be busy. That's my main thing. I like to be working on something. So I think honestly, right now with the balance I've struck with doing some murals, doing some studio work, doing some just sort of volunteer art stuff where I help with other organizations in the city, is right where I want to be. So it's yeah, it's good. It's good.
Nice. And then, so as you're kind of going through the first couple of years, I'm really interested in like the kind of the starting phase, because I've only in
Yeah.
business for 2 years, still very, very new. And it's like the tipping point, and then where did the story behind the Forward Warrior come from? Like, um, talk me through how that was created, and then
hmm
how it's kind of blossomed into what it is today.
Sure. Yeah. So it was still within the first, I guess, 2 years of my freelance career. And I was living with another artist, photographer and filmmaker. And we were kind of, we were both in that early freelance mode. Things were still kind of tight. We weren't living lavish or anything like that. But we wanted to sort of always encourage each other. And so when we would get, in our feelings and anxious about stuff, we would say to each other, "Forward, warrior."
Hmm.
And so it was literally something we would say to each other to just sort of
Nice.
encourage us to keep going, and not get sort of bogged down. And over time, I knew I wanted to do some sort of live painting event. And I was working a lot with a gallery owner named Keith Roberts, who ran a place called Melvin Gallery, which is actually where Lady Bird is right now. So, on
Yeah.
the Beltline there. So
Yep.
that back lot, that little outside area, was where we had the first Forward Warrior.
Mm.
Um, and I talked to Keith, the gallery owner. I said, "Hey, let's just do a painting party, and we'll have beer, and we'll have a DJ, and we'll charge $5 at the door, and it'll be a cool event for the gallery." And I was able to get some pretty big names, at the time. Folks like Michi Miko and Brandon Sadler and Greg Mike, some pretty big street artists at the time, and all of that. I kind of met all those people through Living Walls, like I mentioned earlier. So I had I just had a great timing to sort of get into the street art world when all these people were kind of mixing and meeting each other. And yeah, so those first two ones, honestly, they were really more about having a party with my friends, and maybe making some beer money on the side.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's actually videos still floating around of the first event. I think Keith Roberts made one. And it's just funny looking back now, of course, because that was 2012, and we were all a lot younger back then. um, yeah, but the first year was a lot of fun. I felt really, I had come from college, and then graduate school, and then teaching. So for me, being a freelance artist was just so sense of such freedom. So for me, just the fact that I didn't have to get up at 6:30 in the morning every day and go get in traffic and all that was just life-giving. I didn't need to make a lot of money early on. It was just the freedom itself that was
Yeah.
really
That,
helped
I
me
mean,
out.
yeah, that'll just push you through. And it
Yeah.
seems like, for me at least, I've, very early on, just kind of a couple years into this, I've been doing marketing and whatnot for about 6 or 7 years on the side, but full time, it just seems I've seen so many people that have already started and quit. And it's like,
Mm.
I'm always curious, like, why do people start something and quit something? I'm like, I think it really comes down to you actually have to love what you're freaking doing at
Yep.
like at the most innate ability. And like a lot of people nowadays with social media and whatnot, everything that's going on in the world, it's like people kind of get forced into things like going to law school or trying to be a doctor
Hmm.
or whatever. Maybe it's their parents or society, but it's like, I feel like the only thing you can really do is like, you really have to love what you do. That's the only way you're going to do it for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years and be successful at it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's something that I, thinking back on your question of those early days, I really was, deeply falling in love with it. And I'd always loved painting, but sort of having the time to give to it. So it's kind of giving back to me, and I'm having these new experiences, painting these things I never thought I'd have the opportunity to. That feeds you, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of not let the anxiety, the financial anxieties, get in the way. And I still get that feeling to this day. I have an amazing studio right now, 3,200 square feet. I can do pretty much whatever I want in here. And just coming in every morning and getting the day started, I'm still struck by just how much fun it is, and the fact that I get paid is just icing on the cake. So
Yeah, and I'm sure
happy for
being
it.
being around, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, being around just that creativity, and I'm sure your work is everywhere around you. So I'm sure that
Yeah,
kind of spurs the creativity
yeah,
as you're
yeah.
kind of going in. Because I work at home, and it's like I have to like get out of the house and go to like different coffee shops, and I'm a
Hmm.
big believer in like changing your environment spurs creativity.
Yep.
Just as simple as like going down the street and going to a coffee shop and sitting outside for a couple hours. Like it helps me tremendously. And that's something that I've kind of grown accustomed to doing now versus just sitting in the same work position in the same office. So I
Hmm.
think kind of corporations can are hopefully starting to see that now with the whole COVID thing, where it's
Right.
like you
Right.
can still be productive at home, and you don't have to
Yeah.
come into one office 5 days a week, 40
Hmm.
hours a week. So, quick
Absolutely.
question for you: is it street art versus graffiti? Is street art like the correct way to classify your art?
Yeah, I would say so. There's street art for me. It gets complicated because a lot of times people just assume something with bold colors and sort of thick outlines, that's graffiti or that's street art. And I always draw the distinction between graffiti and street art around legality. So for me, if something is done illegally, then I would call that graffiti. If it was commissioned by somebody, then I'd probably call that a mural. And if it's in that kind of middle ground of, is it legal, is it art, then it's probably street art. But nowadays they call kind of anything street art, anything that has that look. If you use spray paint or you use stencils, and it's art on the street. So I think it gets very muddy, and there's
Right.
certain we'll call them the people who want to sort of police that, of and it's kind of ridiculous to me. In the end, I like to make art. Some people say my stuff uh, looks like street art. I'll take it. I certainly did some graffiti as a teenager, and that definitely inspired me, and those were some of the first pieces of art that I saw were in abandoned buildings and under bridges and stuff where we would go paint. But in the end, I think it's all about expressing oneself creatively. There's definitely people out there on the graffiti side of things who it's more about just marking their territory, uh, just kind of the attitude of the pissing contest kind of thing, and that's how they want to look at it. They shy away from any notion of art whatsoever. But of course, there's art in a tag. There's art in all these different styles of graffiti that are out there. I mean, calligraphy is a unbelievable art, and I think that you can find ties there too. Usually, street art has a message. I think maybe that's part of it. There's content there. It's not just a word.
Right, right. Yeah. I didn't know if graffiti was like kind of derogatory for what you guys are put out in the world, but yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Another question for you. It's how do you legally get approved to do this? To paint whatever in whatever part of the city? Is it a quick process? Is it lengthy? Like what? Talk me through that.
Yeah. So right now, there's actually no ordinance in the city of Atlanta with regards to art on private property. Um, we actually sued the city of Atlanta several years ago because they were trying to pass an ordinance that basically would require city council approval before you could put anything deemed art on your property. If you check that out, there's a lot of information on that. It was the plaintiffs were myself, Yo-Yo Farrow, Fabian Williams, and the owner of Church, Grant Henry. We essentially said that this new ordinance is unconstitutional. You can't have prior restraint to free speech. And the judge ruled in our favor. And so there's no public art ordinance on the books currently in the city of Atlanta. So if you're a private property owner, you can put up what you wish. People have been pretty pretty good about policing themselves. There's been a few murals here and there that caused controversy, and the public went out and painted over them, or they were able to speak with the private property and get it painted over. So I don't think we need government getting into public art. I think that as the public goes, we're able to kind of organize ourselves. There have been cases of artists in the city who, it came out that they were just awful people and harassing women, for example. And so their murals were painted over. And, a city ordinance wouldn't have caught that. So
Right.
I think that it's sort of a communal, there's a communal understanding and a public understanding of that physical art in public spaces. And if you make you make bad decisions and you put up stuff that people don't like, it's very easy for someone to come out and ruin it and just get rid of it. So yeah, right now there's nothing on the books, and that's kind of how we like it.
Yeah, that's awesome that it just kind of polices itself. And I was reading the article earlier where you guys took legal action, and I mean
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I have a tidbit of creativity with like graphic designing and logos and things like that. But yeah, I mean I'm all for that creativity in plain sight, and it really is art. It's
Hmm.
not like I just think graffiti is just like kind of a derogatory term, but it's really
Hmm.
art, throughout the
Yeah.
city, and people expressing how they feel and how they see things. And yeah, it's really cool, man. That's why I was super excited to get you on the podcast.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So just kind of wrapping up, and we'll get into the rapid fire round quickly. From more of a business standpoint question, do you have a team with you? Is it only you? Like how's your operations?
Yeah, I have a small team. My girlfriend helps me out a lot, and I have an assistant named Jermaine who helps me out. It really depends on the job. There's certain things I'll just hire people on, but generally, small team, basically two, maybe three of us will work on stuff. I'm pretty efficient at this point, so I know a lot of time saving techniques.
Right.
But yeah, I like to keep it small. I think it's just easier for me.
Yeah. And how is I'm sure you get this question a lot, but how has COVID affected what you guys are doing now?
Yeah, so I was going to be doing a really cool live painting event for the NCAA March Madness, so that got canceled. That
Dang.
was a bummer. Then I was supposed to go to Holland to paint for this in sort of environmentally sound paint company. They were doing some promotional stuff in Amsterdam, and they wanted to fly out an Atlanta artist and sort of do an exchange, and that got canceled. I've had those are probably the two biggest things. I've been lucky that I got some design jobs, some sort of graphic design jobs, where I was able to design some stuff for this company's website. And a lot of my work has shifted towards doing physical objects rather than murals. So I'm doing more paintings. I've been doing these assemblages, and just honestly, I love it. I get to hang out in my studio, just make stuff, and then I post it online and sell it. And it's, I think people are at home now more, so they want things in their homes. They want more art. They can't, go out to museums or galleries. So I've really seen that reflected kind of in the work that I do. There's still mural gigs going on. I have a couple that are coming up soon, but when companies are looking at those expenses, I think art is one that they're quick to cut.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of artists are feeling it, and I've been pretty lucky though, so it's been good.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like you're well established enough and have enough relationships in the city. It seems like that maybe an e-commerce piece for you would be huge. You know what I mean? Being able to
Yeah,
create something, sell it, ship it without having to interact at all.
right. Yeah, I would like to add more of that. I think I've always shied away from sort of small transactions and print sales and shirts and stuff. For me, I'd rather people get kind of, the original, and I think I just hate mailing things. I like my day to be sort of spent in the studio making work, and I don't want to always be at UPS or something. But
Yeah.
it's definitely something I'm thinking about, and my girlfriend's actually building her own site right now, and that's going to be a component of that too. So maybe I'll follow her lead and start doing that.
Nice. Yeah. I could just see people, um, just decking out their home office and like
Hmm.
having a huge piece of art on one of the walls would be huge right now. Cause everybody's in their home,
Yeah,
they're creating all these home offices and, that's not going away anytime soon. I don't think so, but
yeah,
yeah, I could see that being awesome for you. You come in, do what you do, get out in a couple days or a week or however long it takes. But yeah,
yep.
it's all about pivoting and, changing. And I mean, that's how people survive. I think that's how
Hmm.
small businesses, uh, actually succeed in the long term. It's, not staying stagnant, always innovating. So
Yeah.
that's cool, man. So let's go ahead and get into the rapid fire round. Just a couple quick questions. And everybody listening, Peter has no idea what is coming. I have not prepped him for any of these. So, what is one thing not many people know about you?
That my father was born in Africa.
Okay. Weirdest thing you've painted on?
Weirdest thing I've painted on, probably a cow skull.
Cow skull. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If you
Cleaned it
had
too.
an if you had an additional 10 grand handed to you right now, where would you spend it in your business?
I would probably. Oh, that's a good question. Damn. I would probably get an air conditioner in my studio.
No AC, huh?
No AC, all fans.
Oh, that's good. What's one thing you're excited about right now?
I'm excited about Biden and Harris.
Nice. One thing I didn't ask you but should have.
Oh man. One thing you didn't ask me that you should have. Well, now I feel like I would be insulting you if I said something. I think you did a great job, man. You covered all the bases.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. What's one crazy thing business has made you do?
One crazy. Oh God. Be 100 feet in the air in a tiny steel bucket, floating over downtown Atlanta, trying not to fall out.
Favorite app on your phone no one's heard about?
Favorite app on my phone no one's heard about. I would say, gosh, how about Amaziograph? It's a really fun mandala drawing app that I have. It's actually on my iPad, but it's really fun for people, whether or not you're artistic. You can kind of make your own mandalas. It's a load of fun.
Cool. I hadn't heard that one. I love that question, man. I get so many crazy answers.
Yeah.
All right, two more. Who should I interview next?
Who should you interview next? How about question? I'm going to stick with the art thing, and I'm going to say Greg Mike.
Greg Mike. Okay. And
Yeah.
then one more time, man. Where can people go to find more about you and what you do?
Best place is my Instagram. It's at Fast Red Car, aka the Ferrari.
AKA the Ferrari. And I was going to say, like, that has to be from Ferrari.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I've actually tried to lean away from the Ferrari thing my whole life, but then kind of nod back to it,
Yeah.
because I've heard it
Yeah.
all my life,
Right.
even 10 years old, I heard about it. So
It's very interesting, man. Like it's memorable. That's a lot
yeah.
of psychology is, intertwined marketing, and it's very memorable. So
Yeah.
I think that's honestly why I remembered your name when I was, I first reached out to you. Maybe it's probably about a month ago. So yeah, man. Cool. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Peter Ferrari, a local artist based here in Atlanta. He's the creator of the Forward Warrior company, which is a live street art fest. He's got a lot going on, if you couldn't tell. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. It was kind of a different one, but I'm super interested in the creative aspect and how you can create that kind of art piece and then turn it into an actual business, which Peter has done. So hopefully you enjoy that episode. If you don't mind, like, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and cue the outro. See you next episode.